And with that, we'll begin with our Curriculum Review Committee agenda item. We had a second draft of the Curriculum Review Committee attached to this agenda item, and subsequently, Mr. McMinimee offered some thoughts from the district on a proposal for such a committee as well. And with that, I think we'd like to open this for some discussion. Just as some background, on September 4th, Board Member Julie Williams proposed creation of a Board Curriculum Review Committee. On September 18th, Ms. Williams and Board Member John Newkirk offered proposals, and there was board discussion, agreed to address at a future date. The board agreed to schedule a discussion of the draft proposal for the October 2nd regular business meeting. And with that, Mr. McMinimee, did you want to say anything about the draft that you had proposed?
Sure. I spent the last 2 weeks in schools with kids, taking phone calls and texts and emails from parents, as many of you did. And I think what the proposal I'm putting forward this evening, I think, is the middle ground, clearly. Clearly, it's the board's responsibility through the Colorado Constitution to review curriculum. But as you've heard multiple people say, there is a vehicle currently in district policy that will get us there. So my proposal moving forward is for us to take the existing IJ and IJR policy with a few minor adjustments. And those adjustments would be to add students to the committees and also to add community members at your discretion. So taking the information from Director Newkirk's proposal, and each one of you would be allowed to select 2 people. One of those persons would become a part of the first committee that's really looking at the resources that go into play in this class. And then the other person would be a part of the other committee. I think it's important for us to honor the teachers that teach these classes. I think there's some fabulous teachers that could lend some excellent experience to the discussion in either of these committees. I think clearly there's content specialists that work at the district office that could be a part of that committee. And you saw the proposal I put forward today. I think clearly this is the middle ground. I believe that our students have shown this evening that they could lend a tremendous amount of information to this committee about being in the class or about what they used to do when they were in the class. And I think they'd be an important part of the conversation as well. So my proposal is that we take an existing policy, IJ and IJR, we expand both of those committees with community members and students, and we have this committee move forward with taking a look at this.
Absolutely. I'll go around, and I know there's going to be discussion, so I'll give everyone an opportunity. Ms. Feldman.
Mr. McMinimee, I'm wondering if you could address how we might ensure that there's geographic representation on this committee, so it's not just all kids or all citizens from one particular area.
So I thought probably the best way to do that would be to have building principals or teachers nominate students from all of our 19 high schools, and then from that group, we would take a look at that with Dr. Morgan.
So you would make that decision?
No, I think that we'd have to define what that process is. This is just a straw man for us to get the conversation started. I think the specifics, obviously, you need to make that decision. But I would propose that our building principals and the teachers that have these students in classes know which kids could lend some experience to this conversation.
I appreciate that, and I'm going to go a little bit broader from just the kids. Looking at the committee as a whole, the geographic representation, I remember when, back in the day, when I would look at this committee, we had a 50% rule where it was balanced, 50% students, 50% content specialists, and that was really important to us because the content people could add their expertise, as you suggested. But we also made sure that we had representation from all of the articulation areas, and I didn't see anything in your proposal about
Well,
that.
I didn't put a number in there. I just said students, and I think that's your decision.
I'm not talking about students. I'm actually talking about the entire committee.
Well, I think, again, I didn't really put numbers to the people. I just said I think it needs to have broad representation. How the numbers come out, I think
so
we
what
should
I
talk
would
about
recommend is that we keep the 50-50 balance, that we keep the content representation. And here's why I think that's so important. I heard over and over and over again from people who had not taught or was not familiar with the content in a particular class or in a particular textbook that they were reading. If they did not have that expertise, it was really hard for them to imagine how that might look in a classroom. So it was really important to have that balance.
Totally agree.
Ms. Dahlkemper?
We just received, first I want to thank you for proposing another alternative for the board to consider, and I appreciate it very much in terms of trying to find some middle ground. I am not prepared to vote on this tonight, of course. As is our practice, this board reviews, asks questions, studies policies first, and then we come back at our second board meeting and we take a vote, if that's what we choose to do on any resolution or proposal. I want to take a moment and I want to talk to our kids in Jeffco tonight. I want to tell you that I am incredibly proud of you for standing up for academic integrity. I am proud of you for your eloquence this evening, and I want to thank you for being engaged, informed citizens in what happens in your classrooms. The community elected this board to serve you and to act in the best interests of your education. As you know, I have said that this resolution that is before the board is too extreme, and you deserve an unvarnished view of history, because you're historians when you're in these classes. You're analytical thinkers, you're gathering information, you're pulling together different evidence, you're having bold conversations and rich and deep, meaningful conversations. I also want to be really clear that it is not this board's role to point fingers, to blame students, to call them pawns, to blame teachers, or to blame others. The responsibility regarding the discussion regarding this resolution rests squarely on the shoulders of this school board. It was the school board that introduced this resolution, and it is my hope tonight that this board will withdraw this resolution, which has been nothing but a distraction to the work of this board. We've got a lot of work ahead, from closing the achievement gap to addressing facilities issues, to thinking about how we're going to leverage the taxpayer dollars that we have to ensure all kids are successful once they graduate from a Jeffco school. So I would hope tonight that this board chooses to withdraw the resolution or that it would support a motion to kill the resolution, and from this point forward, we move forward and discuss further the proposal that has been put forward by the superintendent. And I will also say for the record, I am perfectly fine with the current process that we have for reviewing curriculum.
Please hold your applause. I very much appreciate many of the points in the, number one, in Mr. Newkirk's draft, which captured most of the dialogue, or a lot of the dialogue that occurred in the first meeting. And I appreciate trying to pull that together, capture the feedback, and come back with words that are very similar to where we ended up, but not a lot of dialogue since. The proposal that Mr. McMinimee has offered adds, I think, some very important elements that we've seen from the community as a desire, and that includes students' voice, ensuring that we have teachers' voice, but not just any teachers, but the teachers that have content expertise, which I think is critical and very much needed. The rigor of the committee, or the potential rigor of the committee, is very much appreciated as well. The one in discussing, in the written discussion that you offered of how that committee might function, you referenced policy IJ and policy IJR, and I would agree that this meets both of those policies. The policy that this does not meet is IGA, which says that the board will review curriculum on a periodic basis, unless this is a board committee. And quite honestly, with this structure and adding this committee to GP 13, so that the board is certain to get a report, but also so that the public is certain to be aware of the meetings, so that they're posted and they know what is being reviewed and what the schedule is for that. I would welcome this proposal with the board being able to appoint 2 members each. That addresses Ms. Feldman's concern about geography as well. So I appreciate that that can be covered there, as we each represent a district.
From our own district.
Well, you could. So that would allow you to address the concern. And that would also allow us to make certain that we have the kinds of eyes that we're looking for, to make certain that we have a balanced and full review. So with that compromise that you've offered here, and taking this proposal as a board committee and adding it to GP 13 so that meetings are public and are scheduled, I'm actually very pleased with this compromise proposal. Ms. Williams.
So I did read over this as well, and in many ways, I wish at the last meeting we would have been able to have this discussion. When I put forward a proposal and it was just full of accusations and not discussion, that was very disappointing. I think Mr. McMinimee has put forward a very good program. I do agree with Mr. Witt of having each of us being able to choose 2 community members, taxpayers, to be able to weigh in on what our children are learning is very important. They do pay for our education for our children, and they should be able to be on this committee. I would want it to be public, such as Mr. Witt said, with those meetings being public and listed as a board committee on the board calendar.
Mr. Newkirk?
Thank you, Mr. Witt. And tonight I really am not so interested in commenting on the merits or shortcomings of any particular curriculum, whether it's AP US History, Sex Education, reading, writing, math, or otherwise. My main concern is ensuring that this board does honor the policies set forth for any curriculum in our district. Now, listen to the language from our own curriculum policy, Policy IGA, which this district adopted in 1997, and I'll quote the language from it. Board-adopted curriculum shall be reviewed by professional staff and identified parent-citizen advisory committees at least every 5 years, and major changes in the curriculum shall be approved by the board. Now, tonight and over the last 2 weeks, I've been assured by many sources, by fellow board members, by staff, by teachers and students, all the way down to 8th grade now, that we already have 2 curriculum committees in place. So why would we need another one? Well, taken at face value, it's a valid question. But dig a little deeper, and I'm coming up with more questions than I have answers. For example, could someone point me to the public meeting notices that were posted before these committees met? Where are the minutes of those committee meetings, and are they available to the public? Was there a minority and a majority report presented? How many members are there in these committees? How were they selected? When was the last time new committee members were named, and who named them, and what were the criteria? Are these 2 committees representative of our community and the board, or have the same members been there for years? And are parents, citizens, adequately represented as required by Board Policy IGA? And finally, since it has been brought up, when was the last time a parent-citizen committee reviewed AP US History? So the course has been around for a while, so certainly there should be evidence that a review has taken place per board policy. There should be evidence that the voices of the parents, taxpayers, and other stakeholders were heard. So if this isn't the case, then I'd say these 2 committees I've heard so much about are not necessarily following procedure, and it's the board's responsibility to have a committee that does. Now, I mention this not in a spirit of recrimination for any past omissions, but in the spirit of determination that going forward this be done properly. The key word for Jefferson County Public Schools is public. So when it comes to our public, we have to ask, have our committees been representative or exclusive? Now, frankly, AP History wasn't even on my radar until the past few weeks. But when I saw the anger and some of the misinformation going around, just from the mere suggestion that the new framework be reviewed, it certainly got my attention. And so my position is this: any curriculum or its advocates that either resist or can't bear the inquiring scrutiny of the general public deserves that scrutiny even more. If any curriculum of those who created it, if they've got nothing to conceal, then they certainly have nothing to fear from a balanced committee of citizens, parents, and, as Mr. McMinimee had just suggested, students and teachers, all of whom are free to make their opinions known to the board. Now, without this, the public is being disenfranchised of their right to review the learning material they're paying for and the material our children are absorbing. So if existing committees have not properly included the public, then they need to start doing so. Or, as Ms. Williams suggested, it's up to the board to form a committee that will.
May I respond, please?
Ms. Feldman, I'll go around another time here. We have discussion.
I think it's really important that we think about our role. Our role is to direct the superintendent. Our role is to say, you know what, this is your policy, this is a district policy, we want to see it, we want to see it implemented. Our role is not to implement. That is the director's or the superintendent's role. I get very upset when I see that we are micromanaging our district, and I don't think that's correct. What I will say about U.S. history, since Mr. Newkirk brought it up, in a letter that was sent from the National Coalition for History to Mr. Paul Lundeen, who is the chairman of the State Board of Education, it says, and I quote, "There is ample room for those of all political persuasions and educational philosophies to work together." That is what we're not doing here. We are not working together. We need to tell our superintendent, we expect this, we want to see this happening, and we need to allow him to do his job.
Ms. Dahlkemper?
Mr. Newkirk, I want to play this out a little bit more. I appreciate your comments about curriculum committee, about minutes, about making sure that there's good representation. I appreciate your thoughts on that. But let's think this through a little bit further. Let's say a curriculum committee is formed to look at AP U.S. history. The curriculum committee decides it's not the right fit for Jeffco and says we want to change it. The reality is that the college board, not the local school board, sets AP U.S. history. That's the bottom line. We've also heard that in public comment tonight. So I question, again, what problem it is that we're trying to solve with the original resolution, with the edited resolution, and I look forward to reading in more detail the superintendent's proposal to find some middle ground, which is much appreciated.
I think it's important to bear in mind that neither in the initial proposal nor in either draft 2 or the proposal from Mr. McMinimee either, does this committee or would this committee have any power other than review and advice. It's purely proposed as an advisory committee to assist the board in its constitutional obligation to oversee instruction and the board's district policy requirement to review and approve curriculum and to make certain that we are doing that on an occasional basis and when curriculum changes. The fact that it's purely advisory is very important to understand because there are many who have said, what will we do when they revise history? There was no proposal to revise history. The proposal was to review the history curriculum to ensure that it is balanced and thorough and appropriate for Jeffco. There is also a misunderstanding in the AP framework. It is a framework. They don't forbid instructors from teaching additional material. They simply require that all of the elements of the framework be covered. I am very much appreciative of the opportunity for our students for AP history and any AP course It's a great advantage to them to be able to take a course that provides college credit or gives them an opportunity for college credit. It's a great advantage to them to be able to participate in a course that is at college level or approaches college level for them. So I'm very much appreciative of AP courses, but it doesn't remove from this board the responsibility to ensure that our curriculum is balanced and fair and adequate. And I think any curriculum choice in this district bears scrutiny, bears review, and certainly bears direct approval, informed approval by the board, as is our responsibility. And for that reason, I like where we've ended up with this committee proposal, again, with a couple of modifications, specifically the modification to move it into GP 13, so we know that it's being treated as a board committee, so the public is informed.
It is not
I
a
actually
board
like
committee. It should be a district committee. It is a district committee. We do not need an additional board committee.
Thank
We
you.
need the additional board review. We can have a report. We do not need another committee.
Right, and so I actually propose at the end, when we talk about process, I can find it here. There's a piece in here that talks about making sure that the report back to the Board of Education has both a majority and a minority report, so that you would see exactly what the committee discussed. I think there, if the wish is to have it wide open for anybody that wants to be there to observe what's going on, I don't see a problem with that. I've talked about it with Dr. Morgan, and I don't think there'd be a problem with people there that wanted to observe. If there wanted to be board members there to be a part or observe, I think that's what we should be doing. I mean, there's no hidden agenda here. I guess where I'm coming from is I think this is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate over the last 2 weeks. We've heard what everyone has said, and that's really what I tried to incorporate into this. You know, and each time I've had opportunities to talk with you individually and heard the things that have been said, I think this meets the needs of the people on this Board of Education. When I had an opportunity to stand in an auditorium with 300 students and hear the questions they were asking and interpret what that would mean, I heard clearly that they wanted to be a part of the process of their education moving forward. From the volume of letters we've gotten from parents and from others, same as you have, I think we've heard loud and clear that people want to be engaged in the processes that we have. And so I think that's the thing I've heard over and over and over, is how can we have a committee that is going to be flexible enough when there's questions. You know, so the next time there's a question about another piece of curriculum, maybe we scramble it a little bit and we have different content specialists, we have different students. I'm talking about a framework to use moving forward. So clearly I think that we need to make sure that we try to do something with a committee that's going to do that.
Will you address the difference between it being a board committee or a district committee? What is the bottom line difference there?
Well, I think what I heard President Witt say was that it was the posting of the meetings, which I think we can say that we're going to do that within our committee, either or. I mean, district policy or GP 13. I mean, if that's a requirement that you want to make sure happens so that people recognize when those happen, to me, that's the only difference.
Mr. McMinimee, I'm lifting some of the language from your proposal here and trying to honor Mr. Witt's interest in it satisfying IGA as well as GP 13. And let me know if this language here is reflective of what your intent is in including more of our community. And I'm adding it to the now second draft that I've marked up of Ms. Williams' original proposal.
Okay?
So it would say, each director may name up to 2 members of the committee. The district's chief academic officer shall serve as advisor to the committee, and the committee shall include 2 teachers of the subject at hand, and 1 student currently enrolled in the curriculum, and 1 student who has already completed the curriculum. Would you comment on that proposed language?
Well, I think we can talk about numbers however we want to. I think the intention is that we have a balanced perspective when we start the discussions here. So, I mean, whatever resolutions we want to come to as we're bringing this back at a future date to talk about how this is going to be comprised, I think that's important to make sure that everybody at this table says, you know what, I think that's the best possible solution to this. So I don't have any problem with that. I think we need to talk about it further, for sure.
Ms. Williams.
So I just wanted to clarify, I know that one of the students asked if anyone had complained about the new AP US History. And I just wanted to put out that the reason why I made that the first agenda item for a review committee is because it is brand new. And we will have a lot of changes in curriculum with the implementation of Common Core. And I do believe it is our tax-paying citizens' right who do fund our education to be able to have that input. So I'm really glad that all of us agree that our community should be able to be on this board and give us input.
I would agree.
Mrs. Feldman.
However, since 2011, the AP College Board has reviewed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different classes, not including AP US History. It is not the first time.
And I posed some questions when I was speaking earlier, and I wonder if there's somebody in the district that might actually be able to shed some light on that. For example, what are the names of these two committees, and who is on them, and how many members are there?
So currently in policy, IJR, number 3 on the resolution I put forward that's cut directly from the committee, it's a two-part process basically in IJR. The first committee is a content review committee, and the committee is currently comprised of content specialists and teachers. This is where I propose adding community members and students. The committee will include a district facilitator. And so this first group, their role is to take a look at the content that's being delivered. What is the resource? So teachers, instructional coaches, community members, content specialists, a facilitator who may or may not be from the above groups. I'd propose a chief academic officer and add students to this. From there, utilizing a rubric, this group would be responsible for content review. Alignment to board ends policies will be ensured. If the resources align, the committee will recommend the text proceeds to a pilot phase. So clearly I heard that there was both the content that people wanted to talk about and the instruction that was happening in classrooms. So this would take care of reviewing the content. The next step then, once the content's been reviewed, is it goes to a resource review committee. And the membership on that would be a minimum of 1 administrator, 1 facilitator, again, the chief academic officer or their designee, teachers, community members, and again, I would propose students that are a part of this. Their job, roles and responsibilities, is to use a rubric approved by the chief academic officer or designee, and committee shall consider the following criteria for the resource: developmentally appropriate, various opportunities for application and transfer of student learning, opportunities to enhance the quality of instruction, assessments that measure what the student understands, knows, and are able to do, extensions of the original text to meet the diverse needs of a wide variety of students, including ELL, GT, and SPED students, quality of language, illustrations, photographs which ensure materials are non-discriminatory and age appropriate. The committee will also consider the body of evidence put forth by the Content Review Committee, any available student performance data from use in schools, completed rubrics to determine suitability. After that, then it comes to the Board of Education, and you take a look at the body of evidence from both of these committees, and it also has a provision in there if you want to have this as part of the policy. Following the work of the committee, the information could be placed in the Jefferson County Public Library for a review for public input for 2 weeks, and then any comments made on that would come back to the committee to do a final review and see if the comments align, or if there's additional work that they need to do, and then it's brought to the board for their consideration, recommending approval or not.